Hi paper crafters, this is Robin with Robin's Creative Cottage. I'm going to share a project with you today using the Life is a Beach Cricut Cartridge. I'm going to start off and use the palm trees on page 40, and then I'm going to use the waves border. It's on page 47. Then I'm going to use the little tiki image, just one of the images that's on page 47. And then I grab my everyday paper dolls and I'm going to use the cloud. The cloud's on page 42 of the Everyday Paper Dolls Handbook. Here's all my images cut out. I did go ahead and attach the tiki face image that's going to be on my project. And then I went ahead and got just a scrap piece of cardstock, and this is going to be the island. Here it is right here. This is going to be my island, and I'm just going to tear a shape out of it for my island. Here are all my pieces. I'm going to go ahead and ink them up using the Tim Holtz Vintage Photo. So I'm going to ink them up. I'm going to ink all the edges. So I'm going in pretty fast motion here, obviously. So let me just give you some dimensions on what I cut. The palm trees, I cut them at 3.71 inches wide by 4.06 inches high. So I'm just inking them up really good. Had to attach a few of the tiki faces. They came loose while I was inking. And then I'm using my Jenny Bolin soap powder ink pad. I almost forgot to ink up my waves, so I did grab my Vintage Photo ink pad. So I'm inking up my waves really quick. And as I did this, I realized that I inked up my waves facing the same direction, and then I needed to flip one over and ink the other side really quick. I grabbed a pencil so that I could kind of trace my island, and I'm just going to use my fingers to tear around for my island, just to see how I want to place it on my card. And again, I just grab my, this time I used the tea-dye ink pad to ink this up. Here I went ahead and attached my island to my card, and then I attached the waves, and then I wanted to just kind of lift up some of those waves. I just flicked them up a little bit with my fingernail just to give it a fun look. And then I needed to flip the card over so that I could trim off the extra waves that are hanging over the edge. Before I get any further in my card, I wanted to add my sentiment. So I grabbed the My Craft Spot Inside and Out, set number 2. And then I also have the My Favorite Things Dynamic, and I've used the Mini Tabs Quartet for my, I just used one of the labels to add my sentiment. Thinking of You stamp, and I added that right in the top corner. And then I wanted to add a little bit of stitching, and so I grabbed my sewing machine, stitched a little bit, and then the strings, the thread rather, I just pulled it to the back of the card and used a little bit of tape to tape it down. Used my poker to bring some of the thread through, and then I just trimmed off the extra strings that were hanging over. took the vintage photo ink and I just rubbed along the thread so it wasn't quite so white and bright. So next I'm going to go ahead and just take my palm tree and I'm going to use my two-way glue pen and add some glue onto there. And this is where the card starts to come alive. This is the fun part, putting it all together. And I went ahead and grabbed my tiki head, and I actually cut 2 of these images so I could do a 3D pop-up look. So here's where you'll see the tiki head image. And the first one that I'm going to lay down, I omitted all of the lines on the inside with using my gypsy. So that's going to be laid down first. And then I took a couple scrap pieces of cardstock, inked them up on the edges, and this is going to be a little bit more of my sand, or my island rather. Using my mounting tape, I wanted to pop up that second tiki head right there, and then I'm going to go ahead and add the little sand pieces just right over the top of the tiki head, and a few of them I'm going to go ahead and tuck underneath the wave there. Now I'll add the second one on using my ATG gun, tucking it a little bit underneath that wave, and just kind of flicking up the edges using my fingernail just to kind of give it a fun look. Then I went ahead and grabbed my clouds, and this is where I realized I meant to tuck the clouds underneath my palm trees. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my poker and just lift up some of those palm tree leaves and go ahead and use my ATG gun and then lay them underneath the palm tree leaves. So it worked out just fine, even though I had to lift up lots of the edges to get it to work just right. Now I have my clouds on. I'm ready to go ahead and add the color to my palm trees. And I did cut these out in 2 different colors. I have a darker green and then a lighter green. So again, just using my two-way glue pen, inking that up really good, and that's what I did on the second leaf as well. Now I've got my palm tree leaves on, my first layer. Now I did cut these out twice, the palm tree leaves, and so what I wanted to do is I wanted to pop up this next layer, and so I grabbed again my mounting tape and just put some pieces all the way around both the darker piece and then the lighter piece as well. And then what I really like to do when I use my mounting tape is I really like to use my poker to lift off the extra pieces, the backing that needs to come off. And so that's what I'll do in just a second here. I find that's just the easiest way for me to get the back off. Once I have the backing off, then I'm going to go ahead and just lay them right on top of each other. And again, just kind of gives them a 3D look, and I really like the look of that. And then I was taking my poker tool and kind of roughing up the leaves a little bit, and then realized using my fingernails was probably easier than trying to lift it up with the poker tool. Now I was just trying to decide what color card base that I should have for my card. This is a A2 size card, so my card base is going to measure 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So once I fold it in half, that's the measurement. And I grabbed the blue and just started putting my ATG gun on my ATG tape, and I started laying it down and decided I didn't care much for the blue. I went ahead and grabbed a brown piece of cardstock, and this is cut at 5 1/2 by 8.5, and then I scored it at 4.25, and then folded it over and then laid my card front on top, and I like the look of that much better. So on the inside of the card, I grabbed again a stamp from my craft spot, and before I went ahead and added my stamp, I decided to do a wave border on the inside of the card, and again I just did some stitching on that, and then I stamped my sentiment. So the outside says thinking of you, and then the inside reads, is one of my favorite things to do. Thanks so much for visiting me today. If you have any questions or comments, I would love them. Have a great day, everyone.